Can I go into the drawing room? The drawing room was the Joneses is where the Joneses kept the expensive and uncomfortable furniture Coraline's grandmother had left them when she died. Coraline wasn't allowed in there. Nobody went in there. It was only for the best. If you don't make a mess, and you don't touch anything. Coraline considered this carefully. Then she took the paper and pen and went off to explore the inside of the flat. She discovered that the hot water tank, it was in the cupboard in the kitchen. She counted everything blue, 135. She counted the windows, 21. She counted the doors, 14. Of the doors that she found, 13 opened and closed. The other, a big carved brown wooden door at the far corner of the drawing room, was locked. She said to her mother, "Where does that go? Where does that door go?" "Nowhere, dear. It has to go somewhere." Her mother shook her head. "Look," she told Coraline. She reached up and took the string of keys from the top of the kitchen door frame. She sorted through them carefully and selected the oldest, biggest, blackest, rustiest key. They went into the drawing room. She unlocked the door with the key. The door swung open. Her mother was right. The door didn't go anywhere. It opened onto a brick wall. "When this place was just one house," said Coraline's mother, "that door went somewhere." I need more light. There we go. "When they turned this house into flats, they simply bricked it up. The other side is the empty flat on the other side of the room. The one that's still for sale." She shut the door and put the string of keys back on top of the kitchen door frame. "You didn't lock it," said Coraline. Her mother shrugged. "Why should I lock it?" she asked. "It doesn't go anywhere." Coraline didn't say anything. It was nearly dark outside now, and the rain was still coming down, pattering against the windows and blurring the lights of cars in the street outside. Coraline's father stopped working and made them all dinner. Coraline was disgusted. "Daddy," she said, "you've made a recipe again. It's leek and potato stew. With a tarragon garnish and melted Gruyere cheese," he admitted. Coraline sighed. Then she went to the freezer and got out some microwave chips and a microwave pizza. "You know I don't like recipes," she told her father. While her dinner went around and around, and the little red numbers on the microwave counted down to 0. "If you tried it, maybe you'd like it," said Coraline's father, but she shook her head. That night Coraline lay awake in her bed. The rain had stopped, and she was almost asleep when she heard a She sat up. Something went. Really using that back of the throat. Okay. Coraline got out of bed and looked down the hall. She saw nothing strange. She walked down. She looked down the hall, but saw nothing strange. She walked down the hall. From her parents' bedroom came a low snoring. That was her father, and an occasional sleeping mutter. That was from her mother. Coraline wondered if she'd dreamed it, whatever it was. Something moved. It was little more than a shadow, and it scuttled down the darkened hall fast, like a little patch of night. She hoped it wasn't a spider. Spiders made Coraline intensely uncomfortable. The black shape went into the drawing room, and Coraline followed it a little nervously. The room was dark. The only light came from the hall, and Coraline, who was standing in the doorway, cast a huge and disordered shadow onto the drawing room carpet. She looked like a thin giant woman. Coraline was wondering whether or not she ought to turn on the lights when she saw the black shape edge slowly from beneath the sofa. It paused, then dashed silently across the carpet toward the farthest corner of the room. There was no furniture in that corner of the room. Coraline turned on the light. There was nothing in the corner, nothing but the old door that opened onto the brick wall. She was sure that her mother had shut the door, but now it was ever so slightly open, just a crack. Coraline went over to it and looked in. There was nothing there, just a wall, built of red bricks. Coraline closed the wooden door, turned out the light, and went to bed. She dreamed of black shapes that slid from the place to place, avoiding the light until they were all gathered together under the moon. Little black shapes with little red eyes and sharp yellow teeth. They started to sing. "We are small, but we are many. We are many, we are small. We were here before you rose. We will be here when you fall." Their voices were high and whispering and slightly whining. They made Coraline feel uncomfortable. Coraline dreamed a few commercials, and after that she dreamed of nothing at all. Chapter 2. The next day it had stopped raining, but a thick white fog had lowered over the house. "I'm going for a walk," said Coraline. "Don't go too far," said her mother, "and dress up warmly." Coraline put on her blue coat with a hood, her red scarf, and her yellow Wellington boots. She went out. Miss Spink was walking her dogs. "Hello, Caroline," said Miss Spink. "Rotten weather." "Yes," said Coraline. "I played porter once," said Miss Spink. "Miss Forcible talks about her Ophelia. But it was my porter they came to see when we trod the boards." Miss Spink was bundled up in pullovers and cardigans, so she seemed more small and circular than ever. She looked like a large fluffy egg. She wore thick glasses that made her eyes seem huge. They used to send flowers to my dressing room. They did," she said. "Who did?" asked Coraline. Miss Spink looked around cautiously, looking over first one shoulder, then over the other, peering into the mists as though someone might be listening. "Men," she whispered. Then she tugged the dogs to heel and waddled off back toward the house. Coraline continued her walk. She was 3/4 of the way around the house when she saw Miss Forcible standing at the door to the flat she shared with Miss Spink. Have you seen Miss Spink, Caroline? Coraline told her that she had, and that Miss Spink was out walking the dogs. I do hope she doesn't get lost. It'll bring on her shingles if she doesn't. If she does, you'll see, said Miss Forcible. You'd have to be an explorer to find your way around in this fog. I'm an explorer, said Coraline. Of course you are, lovey, said Miss Forcible. Don't get lost now. Coraline continued walking through the gardens in the gray mist. She always kept in sight of the house. After about 10 minutes of walking, she found herself back where she had started. The hair over her eyes was limp and wet, and her face felt damp. Ahoy, Caroline, called the crazy old man upstairs. Oh, hello, said Coraline. She could hardly see the old man through the mist. She walked down the steps to the outside of the house that led up past Coraline's front door to the door of his flat. He walked down very slowly. Coraline waited at the bottom of the stairs. The mice do not like the mist, he told her. It makes their whiskers droop. I don't like the mist much either, said Coraline. The old man leaned down so close that the bottoms of his mustache tickled Coraline's ear. The mice have a message for you, he whispered. Coraline didn't know what to say. The message is don't go through the door. He paused. Does that mean anything to you? No, said Coraline. The old man shrugged. They are funny, the mice. They get things wrong. They got your name wrong, you know. They kept saying Coraline, not Caroline. Not Caroline at all. He picked up a milk bottle from the bottom of the stairs and started backing up to his attic flat. Coraline went indoors. Her mother was working in her study. Her mother's study smelled of flowers. What shall I do? Asked Coraline. When do you go back to school? Asked her mother. Next week, said Coraline. Said her mother. I suppose I shall have to get you new school clothes. Remind me, dear, or else I'll forget. And she went back to typing things on the computer screen. What shall I do? Repeated Coraline. Draw something. Her mother passed her a sheet of paper and a ballpoint pen. Coraline tried drawing the mist. After 10 minutes of drawing, she still had a white sheet of paper. With mist, with M-I-S-T written on it in one corner with slightly wiggly letters. She grunted and passed it to her mother. Very modern, dear, said Coraline's mother. Coraline crept into the drawing room and tried to open the old door in the corner. It was locked once more. She supposed her mother must have locked it again. She shrugged. Coraline went to see her father. He had his back to the door as he typed. Go away, he said cheerfully as she walked in. I'm bored, she said. Learn how to tap dance, he suggested without turning around. Coraline shook her head. Why don't you play with me? She asked. Busy, he said. Working, he added. He still hadn't turned around to look at her. Why don't you go bother Miss Spink and Miss Forcible? Coraline put on her coat and pulled up her hood and went out of the house. She went down the stairs. She rang the door for Miss Spink and Miss Forcible's flat. Coraline could hear the frenzied woofing as the Scotty dogs ran out into the hall. After a while, Miss Spink opened the door. "Oh, it's you, Caroline," she said. Angus, Hamish, Bruce, down now, lovies. It's only Caroline. Come in, dear. Would you like a cup of tea?" The flat smelled of furniture polish and dogs. "Yes, please," said Coraline. Miss Spink led her into a dusty little room, which she called the parlor. On the walls were black and white photographs of pretty women and theater programs in frames. Miss Forcible was sitting in one of the armchairs, knitting hard. They poured Coraline a cup of tea in a little pink bone china teacup with a saucer. They gave her a dry Garbani biscuit to go with it. Miss Forcible looked at Miss Spink, picked up her knitting, and took a deep breath. "Anyway, April, as I was saying, you still have to admit there's life in the old dog yet." "Mariam, dear, neither of us is as young as we were." "Madame Archia," replied Miss Forcible, "the nurse in Romeo, Lady Bracknell, character parts. They can't retire you from the stage." "Now, Mariam, we agree," said Miss Spink. Coraline wondered if they'd forgotten